Cowboys eat Apache women, but not in the way the Apache girl thought. The sun had barely started its climb over the hills when little Naili, an Apache girl of 12, woke to the sound of the wind rustling through the tall grasses near her home. The soft hum of morning had a strange, almost magical quality, but it did nothing to ease the nervous feeling she carried in her chest. She had always been cautious, but today her senses seemed sharper than ever. Her grandmother had warned her many times about the cowboys, the strange men who rode through the plains on horseback. "They don't belong here, Naeli," she had said, just the night before, her voice low and serious. "You must watch, you must listen, and you must always stay hidden if they come near." Naeli shivered, remembering her grandmother's words. Stories of cowboys had always filled her imagination with fear. She remembered how her older cousin had described the way they shouted across the fields, how they would stomp and command their horses, and how their laughter sounded harsh and strange. Naeli had never met a cowboy herself, but the tales she had heard made them seem like creatures of a different world, unpredictable, dangerous, and impossible to trust. From the small clearing near her family's camp, Naeli could see the faint outline of smoke curling into the sky from a distant ranch. That was the direction she had seen cowboys ride the day before. Her heart pounded. Maybe some had come closer during the night. Maybe they were here now, watching her people. She wrapped her shawl tightly around her shoulders, almost as if it could shield her from what she feared. She crouched behind a cluster of rocks, her small body tense, her eyes wide. Morning stretched slowly. Naeli's gaze wandered over the familiar hills, the dry grasses swaying in the light breeze. Birds chirped cheerfully, but their songs seemed almost mocking in her fear. Her mind raced with questions. Were the cowboys alone? Were they friendly? Or were they like the men in the stories, ready to scare or hurt the Apache women she loved? Naeli knew she could not speak or make a sound. Her grandmother had taught her well. Silence could save a life. She reminded herself that she had to be invisible like a shadow until she understood what was happening. Hours passed, though Naeli did not notice. Her eyes never left the horizon, scanning for movement. Finally, the sound of hooves reached her ears. Her stomach flipped. A group of cowboys appeared, their horses kicking up dust as they rode slowly along a trail. Naeli's first instinct was to hide further. She pressed herself flat against the ground behind the rocks, holding her breath. Her heart raced so loudly she was sure they could hear it. The cowboys did not seem to notice her. They were focused on something else. Some of them carried bags. Others had tools tied to their saddles. Naeli's mind filled with dread. Were they here to harm her family? The stories she had grown up with pressed on her imagination, filling it with frightening possibilities. She imagined the worst, a terrible scene she did not want to picture, but could not stop herself from seeing. Her gaze shifted to the women in her camp, who were busy preparing food and tending to children. Naeli saw the careful way they moved, their voices calm as they worked. Her heart sank at the thought that someone might disturb this peace. She thought about her mother and older sisters. What if the cowboys wanted to take something or someone? Naeli's small hands clenched into fists. She felt powerless, and the fear was almost overwhelming. Despite her fear, Naeli could not look away. She watched as the cowboys dismounted and began to work. But something was strange. They did not shout. They did not act aggressively. One of the men set down a bag and pulled out what looked like food. Naeli squinted, trying to make sense of what she saw. One cowboy offered bread to a woman who had stepped near the edge of the camp. Naeli froze, her mind struggling to process what was happening. She expected fear, but instead she saw a strange calmness. Slowly, Naeli realized that the cowboys were not harming anyone. They were sharing something. Food, water, small gifts. Naeli blinked. This could not be right had the stories been wrong. Could it be that these men were not dangerous after all? She wanted to call out to her family to tell them that the cowboys seemed kind, but she remembered her grandmother's warning. She must stay hidden. She must watch. She must understand before acting. Time passed and Naeli noticed small details. One cowboy helped a woman adjust a heavy basket. Another gently guided a child back toward the group of Apache women, making sure the child was safe.
Naeli's fear began to mingle with curiosity.
She felt a strange new sensation, surprise. These men, whom she had imagined as frightening monsters, were behaving in ways she had never expected. Her heart slowly calmed, though she remained cautious. She thought about the stories she had grown up with. So many of them spoke of danger and cruelty, of cowboys who did not care about anyone but themselves. Yet here she was, watching the opposite. Nellie felt a flicker of confusion. How could this be? Was it possible that the stories were exaggerated, that fear had painted them as something they were not? Naeli realized that she had been imagining the cowboys as villains without truly knowing them. As the morning light grew stronger, Naeli's attention shifted again. The cowboys were finishing their small tasks. They gathered the leftover food, carefully packed their belongings, and waved politely toward the Apache women as they prepared to leave. Naeli's heart thudded with relief. There had been no harm, no violence, no danger. Just human interaction, kindness, and respect. Yet Naeli knew she had learned something important. Fear could make small things seem enormous. Stories could twist the truth into shapes that frightened the mind. And assumptions, no matter how deeply rooted, could be mistaken. She felt a sense of pride. She had hidden, observed, and learned. She had faced her fear in her own way, quietly and carefully without letting it control her. She moved slowly from behind the rocks, careful not to make a sound. Her legs were stiff from crouching, but her mind was alive with thoughts. She wanted to share what she had seen, but she also understood that her family might not believe her at first. They had heard the same stories, and the cowboys had always been painted in fearsome colors. Naeli realized she must find a gentle way to explain, to help them see what she had learned without dismissing their experiences. For the rest of the day, Naeli stayed close to the camp, but her mind wandered back to the cowboys. She remembered the careful way they treated the women, the respect in their voices, the quiet generosity that had surprised her. She felt a strange warmth, hope, perhaps, or the excitement of discovery. It was a new feeling, different from fear, and it made her heart lighter. By evening, when the sun dipped below the horizon, Naeli returned to her grandmother. She could not keep the story to herself any longer. "Grandmother," she said softly, they were not like I thought. The cowboys, they shared food.
They helped. They were...
Kind. Her grandmother looked at her thoughtfully, a small smile touching her lips. Sometimes fear makes monsters of men who are not monsters, Naeli. You have learned a lesson that many do not. To watch, to learn, and to understand before judging. Remember it well. Naeli nodded, feeling the weight of the lesson settle in her chest. She had begun to understand the complexity of the world, that not everything was as simple as the stories said. That courage was not only in defending oneself, but also in seeing clearly, in noticing truth, and in questioning what one had been told. As night fell, Naeli lay in her small bed, staring at the stars through the opening of her tent. The wind whispered softly through the grasses outside, carrying with it the scent of the earth and the distant ranch. She closed her eyes and let herself remember what she had seen, the careful kindness of the cowboys, the trust she had begun to feel, and the curiosity that had grown inside her. For the first time, fear was not the only thing in her heart. There was also hope, and a quiet excitement for what tomorrow might bring. The morning sun rose again over the hills, casting long golden rays across the plains. Naeli woke early, as was her habit, but this time she did not feel the usual tightening of fear in her chest. Instead, a strange curiosity had taken root. The events of the previous day lingered in her mind, and she could not stop thinking about what she had seen. The cowboys who she had expected to be frightening and harsh had shown kindness. They had shared food, helped her people, and treated the women with respect. Naeli felt both surprised and confused. How could her world be so different from the stories she had grown up hearing? She carefully dressed and wrapped her shawl around her shoulders just as she had the day before. Today, however, she did not hide immediately. She wanted to observe to see more clearly. From her hiding place among the rocks and tall grasses, she could see the distant trail where the cowboys often rode. Her heart raced, not with fear this time, but with anticipation. What would they do today? Would they come near again? And would she be able to understand more about them? Hours passed slowly. Naali watched as the wind swayed the grasses, the birds darted from branch to branch, and the small animals scurried in the underbrush. She thought about her family, her mother, her grandmother, and her older sisters. They had always warned her to stay cautious. But Naali realized that caution did not mean avoiding knowledge. Sometimes, she thought, it meant watching carefully, learning, and understanding before making decisions. Then, in the late morning, movement caught her eye. A group of cowboys appeared on the distant trail. They were mounted on their horses, moving at a steady pace. Naali crouched behind a rock, her heart beating faster, but not with fear. She noticed the way they guided their horses carefully, speaking in low tones to one another. Something about their manner seemed more gentle than she had expected. One of the cowboys dismounted and began to unpack a small bundle from his saddle. Naali's eyes widened as she realized it contained food, bread, fruits, and other supplies. She held her breath, waiting to see what would happen. To her surprise, he approached one of the Apache women who had stepped near the edge of the camp. Instead of shouting or making demands, he offered the food politely, with a small nod and a smile. The woman hesitated for a moment, then accepted. Naali felt a flicker of hope. Could it be that the cowboys were here to help, rather than harm? She watched closely as another cowboy gently helped a child who had wandered too far from the women. He guided the little one back to the camp, speaking softly, so the child would not be afraid. Naali could hardly believe her eyes. These men were not monsters. They were careful, attentive, and considerate. Curiosity began to outweigh fear. Naali moved slightly, trying to get a better view without revealing herself. She noticed how the cowboys worked together, each taking a small task and helping the others when needed. One cowboy lifted a heavy container for a woman, and another shared a small drink of water. Naali's heart warmed. She realized that her assumptions, the fear-filled stories she had believed, were not entirely true. The cowboys were not cruel. They were simply men who lived in a different world, with different ways, but they were capable of kindness. As the morning continued, Naali observed more details. The cowboys laughed quietly among themselves, but their laughter was not harsh or mocking. It was light, almost gentle, and it made her think of the laughter she had heard at her own camp during happy moments. She realized that laughter could sound different depending on the person, but it was always a sign of humanity. Naali's fear continued to melt, replaced by fascination. One moment stood out more than any other. A cowboy noticed that one of the Apache women was struggling to carry a heavy basket. He approached her carefully, making sure not to startle her, and offered to help. She accepted, and together they carried the basket to the camp. Naali's eyes filled with wonder. She had expected confrontation, tension, or anger. Instead, she saw cooperation, understanding, and quiet respect. Naali thought about her grandmother's lessons. Watch, listen, learn. These words now made sense in a new way. Observing quietly had allowed her to see the truth for herself. The cowboys were not enemies. They were simply strangers who were learning how to interact with her people, just as she was learning how to observe them. Naali felt a sense of pride. She was learning, thinking, and understanding in a way that was rare for someone her age. Time passed and the cowboys continued their work. One of them approached the edge of the camp where Naali had been hiding the day before. He spoke kindly to the women, asking questions in a polite way. They responded, and Naali noticed smiles and nods exchanged between them. Communication did not need to be loud or forceful. Even small gestures, a nod, a smile, an offering of food, could create understanding. Naali felt a growing sense of wonder at how simple kindness could bridge worlds. She also noticed the cowboys' attentiveness to the land. They did not trample the grasses carelessly. They made sure the horses stepped carefully, avoiding damage to the crops and the earth. Naali realized that respect could be shown in many ways, not just in words or actions toward people. Even in their movements, the cowboy showed thoughtfulness and care. This lesson added another layer to her understanding. By midday, Nayeli felt more confident. She moved a little closer, staying behind bushes and rocks, but trying to see more clearly. She saw one cowboy sit down and share his food with a small group of children from her camp. They hesitated at first, unsure, but then accepted with curiosity and delight. Nayeli's heart swelled. The fear that had once gripped her so tightly was gone, replaced by a growing sense of possibility. She thought about the stories she had grown up hearing. So many spoke of cowboys as harsh, dangerous, and cruel. But here she was, seeing a completely different reality. She realized that stories could carry fear as well as truth. They could protect, but they could also mislead. Nayeli understood that she had to be careful not to let assumptions control her mind. Observing and learning for herself was far more powerful than believing stories without questioning me. As the afternoon sun climbed high in the sky, Nayeli noticed a moment of connection. One of the cowboys laughed softly as he helped a woman untangle a rope. The woman smiled in return, and Nayeli felt her chest lift. This was not fear or hostility. This was cooperation and friendship forming slowly, carefully, across a divide she had not imagined could exist. Nayeli felt a sense of hope that she had never experienced before. She stayed hidden, but her mind was active. She imagined what it would be like to approach, to speak, to understand more. But she knew she must be patient. Rushing could break the delicate trust she was beginning to witness. Nayeli's curiosity grew stronger, tempered by careful observation. She realized that true understanding required patience, attention, and respect. By late afternoon, the cowboys began to prepare to leave. Nayeli's heart sank slightly. She wanted to see more, to learn more, to understand more. She noticed the careful way they packed up their belongings, the way they said goodbye to the women with polite nods and gestures of respect. Nayeli felt a mixture of sadness and gratitude. Sadness that they were leaving, but gratitude that she had seen the truth of their character. As the cowboys rode away, Nayeli remained still for a long time, letting the dust settle and the quiet return to the plains. She thought about what she had learned. Fear had once ruled her mind, but observation had replaced it with understanding. Stories had once filled her imagination with danger, but real-life experience had shown her kindness. Nayeli felt a growing strength within herself, the strength to question, to observe, and to understand the world in her own way. When she returned to the camp that evening, Nayeli could not wait to share her thoughts with her grandmother. She described everything she had seen: the food, the care, the quiet laughter, and the small acts of help. Her grandmother listened carefully, nodding. "You are learning an important lesson, Nayeli," she said. "The world is not always as it seems. Courage is not only in hiding or running. It is also in seeing clearly and understanding the truth, even when it surprises you." Nayeli felt proud. She had faced her fear, observed the cowboys, and learned a truth that was different from everything she had believed. She understood now that the world was not black and white. There was complexity, humanity, and kindness, even where fear had once seemed absolute. And in this understanding, Nayeli felt a quiet excitement for tomorrow, for the new lessons she would learn, for the new possibilities she might discover, and for the friendships that might quietly grow in ways she had never imagined. As night fell, Nayeli lay beneath the stars, listening to the wind and feeling the gentle warmth of the day slowly fade. She knew that her fear had not disappeared completely. It would return sometimes, as it always did, but it no longer controlled her. She had seen a new way of living, one of understanding, patience, and respect, and she knew that she would carry this lesson with her always, learning from every new experience, every new person, and every new moment of life. The next morning the plains were quiet, with only the soft rustling of grasses and the distant calls of birds filling the air. Nayeli awoke with a sense of purpose. The events of the previous days had changed something in her heart. She no longer felt the same sharp fear she once had when thinking about the cowboys. Instead, she carried curiosity and cautious hope. Today she wanted to see more, to understand more clearly who these men were, and why their actions seemed so different from the frightening story she had always heard. Naomi dressed carefully and wrapped her shawl tightly around her shoulders. She moved with quiet steps toward a familiar observation point, one that gave her a clear view of the trail without being seen. Her eyes scanned the hills, alert for any sign of movement. Soon she saw them, the cowboys riding slowly toward the camp, their horses kicking up small clouds of dust. Naomi crouched behind the rocks, her pulse quickening with anticipation, but not fear. This was not danger she felt, but discovery. As the cowboys dismounted, Naomi noticed how naturally they moved around the camp. They spoke softly to the women, offering small gestures of help and kindness. One cowboy handed a container of water to an older woman, who accepted it with a polite nod. Another helped a young boy balance a heavy basket. Naomi's chest warmed as she observed these acts. Every action seemed deliberate, careful, and respectful. She realized that these men, who had once seemed so frightening, were showing patience and consideration. Naomi's curiosity grew stronger. She inched closer, hiding behind taller bushes now, her eyes wide as she observed. She noticed details she had missed before, the way one cowboy gently patted his horse to calm it when it grew restless, or how another carefully avoided stepping on the young plants growing near the camp. These small acts of attentiveness made Naomi feel a growing respect. These were not careless outsiders. They were people who understood how to move gently, even in a world that could sometimes be harsh. Then something unexpected happened. One of the cowboys noticed a small child wandering near the edge of the camp. He spoke softly, offering a friendly smile, and the child hesitated before returning to the safety of the women. Naomi's eyes followed every motion, feeling both admiration and relief. She realized that courage did not always roar. Sometimes it was quiet, patient, and careful, and she saw that kindness could be as brave as strength. For a long time, Naomi remained hidden, taking in every movement. She noticed how the cowboys communicated with each other without raising their voices, sharing tasks and helping one another in small, almost unnoticed ways. One man handed a loaf of bread to another, who then offered it to a woman who had been preparing meals. Naomi's heart lifted. This was a world where cooperation and respect existed even between people from very different lives. Her mind wandered to the stories she had grown up with, tales of cowboys as dangerous, unpredictable, and harsh. She had believed them completely, letting fear shape her thoughts. Now, watching these men, she realized that stories could be powerful, but they were not always accurate. They could warn, but they could also deceive. Naomi began to understand that seeing for herself, observing carefully, was far more important than listening to what she had been told. Hours passed, and Naomi's cautious observation slowly turned into quiet fascination. She noticed a moment of connection she had never seen before. One of the cowboys helped an elderly woman adjust her heavy basket, and she smiled at him with gratitude. The simple exchange carried a sense of warmth, trust, and understanding. Naomi felt a spark of something new inside her, a recognition that humans could bridge differences through care and respect, even without words. Finally, Naomi's curiosity overcame her caution. She inched a little closer, making sure to remain hidden, but trying to get a clearer view. She could see the expressions on the cowboys' faces now, gentle, focused, and kind. One of the men noticed a small animal near the camp and gently shooed it away without harming it. Naomi was amazed at how they respected both people and nature. Every detail she observed added to her growing understanding that fear was not the only lens through which to see the world. Then, a surprising moment happened. One of the cowboys set down a basket of fruit near a group of women and children. He stepped back and gestured politely for them to take some. Naomi held her breath, wondering how they would react. To her relief, the women smiled and accepted the fruit. Naomi felt a rush of hope. These interactions, small as they were teaching her an important lesson. Kindness could create trust, even across worlds that had once seemed separate. Naomi wanted to learn more. She moved slightly, trying to remain unseen while getting a better view. She noticed a cowboy sitting down near the women, sharing stories in simple words and gestures, making the children laugh. Nayeli smiled softly. Laughter, she realized, could bridge fear as easily as any action. She remembered her grandmother's advice. Watch, listen, learn. She had done all three, and now she understood why they mattered. As the day continued, Nayeli's observation became more like participation in spirit. She began to anticipate what the Cowboys would do next, predicting their actions and feeling a growing sense of connection. She realized that understanding required attention, patience, and respect. And she felt proud of herself, proud that she had stayed hidden, watched carefully, and learned for herself. This was bravery of a different kind. By late afternoon, Nayeli noticed another important moment. A cowboy helped a young girl carry a heavy bundle, speaking softly and offering encouragement. The girl smiled, and Nayeli felt her heart swell. She understood that kindness could be transformative, even in small doses. One simple act of help could change a moment, a day, or even a relationship. Nayeli's respect for these men had grown, and her previous fear seemed almost distant now. The sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the plains. Nayeli realized the Cowboys were preparing to leave. She felt a small pang of disappointment. She wanted to see more, to understand more, to learn more from their actions and their behavior. But she also felt gratitude. The lessons she had learned today were more valuable than she could have imagined. She had begun to see the world through a clearer lens, one that included patience, kindness, and understanding. When the Cowboys finally mounted their horses and rode away, Nayeli remained hidden for a few more minutes, letting the dust settle and the quiet return to the camp. She thought about everything she had observed, the food shared, the careful attention, the small gestures of respect, and the laughter. Each detail had built a new picture in her mind, one of humans who could connect across differences through understanding and care. When she returned to her family's camp, Nayeli could barely contain her thoughts. She found her grandmother sitting outside, her eyes following the last light of the sun. Nayeli approached slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Grandmother," she said, "today I saw more. They are not what I thought, the Cowboys. They help, they share, and they are kind. I think we were wrong to be so afraid." Her grandmother studied her carefully, a small smile forming. "Fear can make us see danger even where there is none, Nayeli. You have learned a valuable lesson today. Courage is not always in fighting or hiding. Sometimes it is in seeing the truth even when it surprises you. Sometimes courage is in understanding." Nayeli nodded, feeling the depth of her grandmother's words. She had begun to understand that life was more complex than stories or fears could capture. There was humanity, kindness, and connection in places she had never imagined. And in this understanding she felt a new sense of strength, the strength to observe, to question, and to learn from the world around her. That night, as Nayeli lay beneath the stars, she thought about what tomorrow might bring. She wondered if she would be brave enough to step closer, to interact, and to see if friendship could grow. She thought about the Cowboys, the women, and the children she had watched. And she felt a quiet excitement, a sense of possibility that made the stars above shine even brighter in her eyes. The next morning, Nayeli woke with a sense of determination. The previous days had taught her more than she could have imagined. She had observed the Cowboys from a distance, seeing their careful manners, their quiet generosity, and the ways they helped her family and neighbors. Fear no longer ruled her mind, but curiosity and a desire to understand more deeply had taken its place. Today, she decided, she would step closer. She would see for herself if trust could truly grow between them. She dressed carefully, her shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders, and moved quietly toward the clearing near the trail. Her heart raced, not with fear, but with anticipation. Every step was cautious, but with purpose. She wanted to approach without startling anyone, to show respect while also learning more. Nayeli's thoughts wandered briefly to her grandmother's words. Courage is not always in fighting or hiding. Sometimes it is in seeing the truth. She felt that courage now, a quiet but steady strength. From her hiding place behind a bush, she saw the Cowboys arriving once again. They dismounted slowly, speaking softly to one another, and began setting up small baskets of food. Niali's eyes widened. She remembered how her fear had imagined danger and harm, and she felt a strange smile spread across her face. Today she would see the truth clearly. The cowboys were not what the stories had said. One of the cowboys noticed her immediately, though he did not call out. Instead, he gave a small, gentle wave, a signal that did not feel threatening. Naeli froze for a moment, her heart beating faster. But she also felt a sense of relief. This was not a challenge or a threat. It was an invitation, a chance to bridge the gap between fear and understanding. Slowly, she stepped a little closer, remaining cautious but visible. The cowboys did not move to approach her aggressively. One of them, the man who had shared bread with the women before, smiled warmly and held out a hand in greeting. Naeli hesitated, then took a careful step forward. She remembered how her grandmother had taught her to trust her eyes and her heart when it came to understanding people. The gesture was kind, and she felt she could respond. I'm Naeli, she said softly. Her voice trembled slightly, but not with fear. It was more from the excitement and nervousness of this moment. The cowboy nodded. "Hello, Naeli," he said gently. "My name is Daniel. We've seen you watching us. It's safe here." Now Yeli's eyes widened. Safe. The word felt foreign in her mind when thinking about cowboys, but Daniel's calm voice made it real. She took another step forward, her curiosity growing stronger. I watched, she admitted. I wanted to know if you were kind, or if you were like the stories. Daniel's smile was gentle. Stories can be powerful, but sometimes they are not the whole truth. We are here to help, not harm. He gestured toward the baskets of food and supplies. We bring what we can to share. We do not wish to scare anyone. Nayeli looked around at the baskets, at the cowboys helping her people, and finally at the women who had welcomed the food. Everything she had observed before now made sense. Her fear, her imagination, the stories, they had all made the cowboys into something they were not. And now, seeing them close, hearing their words, she felt a rush of relief and understanding. Slowly, she stepped closer to the baskets. One of the women who had seen Nayeli approach smiled warmly. "It's all right, little one," she said softly. "They come with kindness, not harm." Nayeli nodded, feeling her tension ease further. She realized that courage was not just in observing from a distance. Courage was also in stepping forward, in opening oneself to the possibility that the world could be different from what she feared. Daniel knelt slightly to meet her at eye level. "Would you like to help us?" he asked. Nayeli blinked in surprise. "Help?" she whispered. "Yes," he said. "You can share the food, carry water, or even just be with us. We can all work together." Nayeli felt her heart swell. She had never imagined such an invitation. It was more than kindness. It was trust, respect, and inclusion. With a quiet nod, Nayeli stepped closer to the baskets. She picked up a small container and carried it toward one of the women. The woman smiled and accepted it gratefully. Nayeli felt a strange joy. She realized that her role, even small, mattered. She was part of this moment, bridging worlds that had once seemed so separate. The cowboys and Nayeli worked together for some time. They shared food, told gentle stories, and helped the women with small tasks. Nayeli noticed how naturally the cowboys treated the children with care and patience. She realized that her imagination had once made them seem frightening monsters, but now she saw the truth. They were humans, capable of thoughtfulness, humor, and generosity. At one point, Daniel picked up a loaf of bread and offered it to Nayeli. "Here," he said. "You've done well. You've been brave to come forward." Nayeli hesitated, then accepted it. She felt a warmth spread through her chest. Bravery was no longer just about hiding or watching. It was also about stepping forward, about choosing understanding over fear. The afternoon passed in quiet harmony. Nayeli laughed softly when one of the younger cowboys told a funny story about his horse stumbling over a small rock. The children laughed too, and the women smiled. Nayeli realized that connection could grow slowly through small acts of kindness, shared laughter, and careful observation. She felt a deep sense of belonging, even though she was only 12 and had only just begun to understand this world. Then, a question she had long feared to ask surfaced in her mind. She looked at Daniel carefully. I thought cowboys eat Apache women, she said softly. Her voice trembled slightly, though not with fear, but with the awkwardness of admitting what she had believed. Daniel chuckled softly, shaking his head. Ah, he said. That's a misunderstanding, Nayeli. When we say we eat Apache women, we only mean that we share meals with them. We enjoy their cooking, their hospitality, and the food they prepare. Nothing else. It's a way of showing respect and friendship. Nayeli blinked. Relief washed over her in a rush. The fear that had haunted her imagination for years, the terrifying stories, the nightmarish visions, all of it melted away. She felt a laugh escape her lips, soft but full of genuine joy. So, it's not what I thought, she said.
It's kindness?
Exactly.
Daniel said gently. It is kindness.
Sharing food, sharing stories, sharing time. That is what we mean. Nothing more, nothing less. Nayeli felt her heart swell. Everything she had feared, everything she had imagined, had been replaced by understanding. She realized how powerful it was to see things for herself, to step beyond fear and assumptions. The sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting a golden glow across the plains. Nayeli looked at the cowboys, at the women, at the children, and felt a deep sense of gratitude. She had learned a lesson she would never forget. Courage was in seeing the truth, patience was in observing carefully, and understanding could change the world in small but profound ways. As the cowboys prepared to leave, Nayeli waved, feeling a sense of friendship she had never imagined possible. The cowboys waved back, their smiles warm and genuine. Daniel gave her a small nod, a silent acknowledgement of the trust and courage she had shown. Nayeli felt a quiet pride. She had faced fear, observed carefully, and finally stepped forward to see the truth. And in doing so, she had helped bridge two worlds, if only a little, with kindness and understanding. When she returned to her family's camp that evening, Nayeli ran to her grandmother. "Grandmother," she said, her voice full of excitement and relief. I learned the truth. The cowboys, they are kind. They share food and help us. They don't harm us." Her grandmother smiled, her eyes soft but full of pride. "I knew you would learn, Nayeli," she said gently. "You were brave enough to see for yourself, patient enough to observe, and wise enough to understand. That is a lesson many never learn." Nayeli's chest filled with warmth. She had faced fear, discovered the truth, and found courage and friendship in unexpected places. As night fell and the stars appeared in the sky, Nayeli lay on a small blanket outside her home. She thought about the cowboys, the women, the children, and the shared laughter. She thought about the lessons of courage, patience, and understanding. And she realized that fear could never fully control her mind again. She had seen the truth, and she would carry it with her always. The plains were quiet, and the wind whispered softly through the grasses. Nayeli closed her eyes, feeling a deep sense of peace. The world was larger, more complex, and more beautiful than she had ever imagined. And she knew that tomorrow would bring more lessons, more discoveries, and more moments of kindness. If only she remained brave enough to observe, patient enough to learn, and open enough to understand.